Well, hello, and welcome back. I've prepared another motivational speech for you today. Got another episode of musical motivation. How about that? So I've made a few of these motivationally inclined videos at this point, and this time I feel like I should start off by saying that I am not a very motivated person myself. I struggle with procrastination, too many distractions, too short of an attention span, lack of energy, lack of inspiration, just about every one of the classic demotivators that keeps the instruments out of the hands of those who need or want to play them on a daily basis. So I hope you all know that it's never my intention with these videos to talk down to my viewers, to take the high road on any subject at all. I'm not trying to sell some amazing life hack that I've perfected or something like that. I write all of these scripts about my own struggles and the things that have worked for me to overcome them. So I'm not getting paid here or anything. I'm not trying to sell a course or a product. There's no sponsorship deal. It's all a labor of love. I just want to use my own experiences to help my viewers succeed as well. So this time we'll talk about ending that procrastination cycle. I used to go weeks or months sometimes without ever touching a guitar, which by today's standards I would consider to be completely unacceptable. And without a doubt, while I was working full-time and also trying to be a gigging musician in a band, as well as other solo projects, my time was stretched very thin. And this placed every musical goal that I had on the permanent back burner. Every goal except the next most essential material that I needed to run through so I didn't mess up at the next gig. I didn't even do much more above and beyond that for a few years. And obviously the full-time work commitment is a big contributor to the procrastination. After a long day of anything, it's hard to spring into action with a hobby right away. It's rarely any better trying to do it in the morning time either, when you're still tired and when the time you have to leave for work is rapidly approaching. I'm sure a lot of folks out there can relate, whether it's a job or if it's school or parenting. Most of us have some responsibility that is keeping us from investing as much time as we'd like to into our music. So you can get started just by trying to convince yourself that even if you only do a little bit, it's still better than doing nothing at all. Even if it's just 10 minutes a day or 5 minutes, even if you just pick up your instrument and play one riff and then put it back down, you've still done much more than all those days that it just sat there untouched. And it's usually after I've convinced myself to just play a little bit that I reach a true earnest level of immersion. And I no longer struggle to stay motivated for a longer practice session at that point. So on a different note, I'm sure we've all had that moment where someone comes up to you and your instrument and they're all like, play me something. And in that moment, even though you know dozens of songs, you have forgotten everything impressive that you know how to play. The same thing is very true with a practice session as well. It's easy to get sort of scatterbrained with all the different riffs that you're trying to learn, songwriting ideas that you're trying to develop, cover songs that you're learning, material from your band, lessons you're taking, techniques that you saw on YouTube. What's worse is that it's also easy to feel overwhelmed by all of this and in turn continue the cycle of procrastination. So what we need to do is streamline the process. Just focus on one or a few things at a time and really nail it before we move on to the next shiny new idea. If the shiny new idea is really, really shiny and really new, then we'll just write it down and save it for later. Sometimes it's easier to pick up your guitar because you have to practice that song that you're going to record next week. Easier than dealing with that feeling of knowing you need to spend more time with your instrument, but lacking a direction to start with, or dare I say, lacking the ever-elusive inspiration. I've found that if I'm waiting to feel inspired before I practice, then I'll probably never practice. Instead, you have to start playing the instrument before inspiration can truly take hold. It's much more often that I'm not really feeling it until I'm in the middle of a song and my tone sounds great, and everything just feels great in the moment. So let's set some small and manageable goals for ourselves. Coming up with goals is pretty easy for me since I'm in a few different bands, along with the solo projects that I do, which have become much more active recently. Throw the YouTube channel in there as well, and I basically always have a backlog of songs that I should be working on, along with anything that catches my fancy along the way, anything that sounds fun to learn and practice that maybe I'll never even use for anything, right? So you could start by keeping a roster of songs that you're currently working on. For me, this is usually around the neighborhood of 4 to 8 songs. But even if it's just one song or just one part of a song, it gives you something to shoot for. Let that be your motivation to pick up your instrument and practice that day. I gotta run through that set list because I'm going to live stream it on Saturday. Or I need to nail the vocals in that second verse soon because I'm uploading it to YouTube next week. And I need to upload every week. Even if you only have one song, make it your goal to play through that song at least once a day. Now, my ideal practice session would be to run through each song probably up to 4 times for material that I'm less familiar with. But this rant that I'm on right now is all about dedicating a manageable and realistic time frame for practice. Even if it's the absolute bare minimum, just spending a little time on it every day is a better way to make progress. Better than waiting for a certain moment when all the stars align, when you're feeling motivated at the same time that you have an entire free afternoon with no distractions. That day very well may never come, at least not very often for very many of us. So that's why it's essential to find those little bits of time here and there and use them with intention so we can make progress on our instrument while still navigating our hectic lives and unreasonable schedules. Anyway, if you don't have an actual reason to get your song finished by a certain time, create a reason for yourself. Make a video or a recording and post it somewhere. Just set a rule for yourself. Say, I have to post a new song every 2 weeks or once a month. It's nice to have that deadline as a motivator of sorts. And of course, it's not the end of the world if you don't stick with it long term. It's just a little personal goal to shoot for. No pressure. Life happens sometimes too, obviously. You just have to stick with it and keep putting effort in. Now, even if you're not comfortable putting your work out there in the world too much yet, on a lot of platforms you can still post songs and then set them to private or something of the sort like that, right? Just something so you're still achieving the goal of uploading something in that time frame. But you don't have to show it off to other people if it's not quite up to your standards of completion yet. And as I mentioned before, I am not a terribly motivated person myself. And these are actual things that I use on a daily basis to get myself up and out of the internet or whatever I'm doing that day and into a productive practice mode. And every single time, I feel much better after I get over that initial hump of procrastination and get some legitimate practice done that I can apply directly to a goal that will be achieved in the near foreseeable future. And this isn't even considering new techniques that you might want to learn either. Maybe once you've played through your list of 3 songs or so, you could dedicate 5 to 10 minutes to run through some scale exercises, try out some different picking styles, or whatever equivalent might apply to your instrument if you're not a guitarist like myself. I also like to write some things down. I keep a record of what music I'm working on, along with some notes on the project to help me out later. As I've mentioned, I have my fingers in a lot of musical pies, so to speak. So the more thorough I can make my notes, the better. This part really helps with the motivation, too. I can just flip through my notes and I'll always find something that I'm eager to work on. Something that maybe had slipped my mind before. I keep an all songs list that includes everything that I've written, from every band or every project, as well as every cover I know how to play well enough at a gig. I started doing this to ensure that I don't forget about any songs while writing set lists for gigs, but it's useful to have this around for practice's sake too. The more material that you're working with, the more likely you are to leave some of it neglected while you're working on that next big thing. In addition to that, I have a list of new things that I want to work on as well. Every time I think to myself, hey, this song's pretty cool, maybe I could play a cool version of it, I stop and make a note to myself. Usually I'll write it down in the Notepad app on my phone, which will then be added to the master list that I keep on my PC later. As well as future goals for my different bands and projects. It all exists in a written form, which helps me to get motivated in addition to organizing my thoughts and agenda. There's a lot of power in focusing your intentions. It's a simple but very effective way to trick yourself into producing more results. I take these lists pretty seriously too, so I have them backed up on my computer and on a few different hard drives. It is always of utmost importance to have your data backed up in more than one place, especially your creative musical ideas. Computers are never 100% reliable, and it's far too often that these things cannot be replaced after they're erased by the machine and forgotten by the artist. Anyway, that's all I have this time. We'll just stop it right there. I'd like to thank you all for listening and sticking around this long, and I hope that was helpful. As always, we appreciate the likes and the subscribes and the comments. Any sort of engagement like that will tell the YouTube algorithm that I'm a music channel that people should be paying attention to. It's greatly appreciated. Every little bit helps so much. And yeah, I hope you stick around and check out some of my music and check out some of my other videos and lessons, and I hope you all have fun out there.